Welcome Unity programmers to this new lesson. In this lesson we will cover the following topics. We start with the introduction, that's what we're doing right now. Then I'll show an alternative way. Then the timer from the previous lesson to delay a function over time in Unity. Next, another alternative way is to use a coroutine using IENumerator. Then we create a bullet prefab with a script attached to it to shoot it into the air. And finally we ensure that a bullet is fired when the player presses the space bar. We end the lesson with the outro. This was the intro. Let's quickly start the lesson. In the previous lesson we made a meteor fall down from the sky every 2 seconds using a timer. In the game manager we have built a create prefab function that calls the spawn enemy function when the timer has expired. This will cause a meteor to appear at the top of the screen in a random location every 2 seconds. This is one way to make function calls over time. But as promised at the end of last lesson, in this lesson I would show an alternative way. This way requires a lot less code. We can start by removing the create prefab function and the create prefab call in the update method, and remove the comments from the start method. We can remove the declaration of the timer. All we need is a single line of code in the start method. To make code repeat we use InvokeRepeating. In parentheses we specify, as a string, the name of the function we want to call. Behind it we specify separated by a comma, 2 float variables. We give them both the value 2. This way we achieve the same thing as with the timer method, but a lot easier. If all goes well, we haven't changed anything in the game. This way works just as well, or even better. We have entered a float variable with the value 2 twice. We can indicate with the first variable. Start invoking after this many seconds. With the second variable, we can indicate repeat every this many seconds. Of course it becomes quite predictable. If a new meteor appears every 2 seconds, we want to make this time random. We can easily adjust this by replacing the second variable with random.range. We let the value fluctuate between 1 and 2.5 seconds. Let's see if it works. It appears that this way does not result in a varying time between each meteor. How did that happen? Why is the time between meteors not variable? Let's look at the code one more time. InvokeRepeating is only called once, so the random.range is also only called once. As a result, the time between the meteors is determined randomly, but is always the same until you restart the game. We need yet another way to achieve our goal. An alternative way to call a function over time is to use a coroutine. A coroutine allows you to pause a function and tell it to wait for a condition or action to occur before continuing. We create a coroutine using IENumerator. We start with the keyword IENumerator and name it launch. Between brackets we create a while loop. In the body we start with yield return. Yield indicates that the method is an iterator, and that it's going to execute over more than one frame, while return, like in a regular function, terminates execution at that point and passes control back to the calling method. The difference is that, with a coroutine, Unity knows to continue the method where it left off. Then we indicate that the execution must wait using wait for seconds. Afterwards, we can indicate how long we have to wait. Here we can try to add a random value to it using random.range. When the seconds have passed, we can call the spawnEnemy function. Now, we just have to start the coroutine in the start method. We give in parentheses the name of the IENumerator. This is called launch. Let's test it. If you look closely, you will see that the distance between the meteors varies. We managed to vary the time between each spawn of a meteor. We can even show that the time between each meteor is different. When we create a new float variable, we set it equal to the random.range statement. We can use this variable for wait for seconds. And we can send the value to the console using debug.log. Thus, we see the time between each meteor appear in the console. If all goes well, each value is different. And here we see the different values appear. We add a new game object in our scene. This will be a bullet that we fire towards a meteor. We name this object bullet. And we make the bullet a bit smaller by adjusting the transform scale. Just a matter of trying what looks good. I think it could be a little smaller. I think something like that looks fine. We create a new script that we call bullet movement. We add this script to the bullet game object. Just check whether it has actually been added. And then we can open the script. We create a function to make the bullet move upwards. We'll start with a comment line so we can quickly see what this function does later. Then we create the function we call moveBullet. In the body we use a simple transform.Translate statement. With a vector 3.up multiplied by a variable bullet speed. Multiplied by time.delta time to make the bullet move up. And don't forget to declare the float variable bullet speed. And it is useful to make it public so that we can give it a value. In the editor, we see an error message with the bullet speed. We must use exactly the same variable name. If we want the bullet to actually move, then we shouldn't forget to call the function in the update method. And to prevent the bullet from lasting forever after it's fired, we need to add a function that destroys it once it reaches the top of the screen. We call this function destroyBullet out of bound. We start the function again with a comment line. Then we create the function destroyBullet if out of bound. Using an if statement, we check whether the bullet's position on the y-axis is greater than or equal to half the screen height, in other words, the top of the screen. If that is the case, we destroy it using the statement destroy with GameObject in parentheses, referring to this GameObject, or the bullet. And we also call this function in the update method. Before we can test this, we first have to give the bullet speed a value, let's say 25. The bullet flies into the air and is destroyed at the top of the screen. We create a prefab from the bullet by dragging it into the prefabs folder. Now we can remove the bullet from the scene, and we can open the movement script. After the comment line, we create the function fireBullet. In the body of this function, we check with input.getKeyDown whether the spacebar has been pressed. If that is the case, then we spawn a bullet with Instantiate bullet. First, we create a GameObject variable called bullet. The location and rotation is the same as that of the player. It is useful to make the GameObject variable public, so that we can add it in the editor. And for the fireBullet function to work, we need to call it in the update method. Save, and go to the editor. Open the player GameObject and drag the bullet prefab into the bullet variable box. And now we can fire bullets at the meteors. This is quite fun, too bad we can't hit the meteors yet. Thanks for watching. In the next lesson, we ensure that we can actually shoot meteors out of the sky with the bullets. Please like and subscribe, so you'll get notified if a new video is uploaded. More people will get this video in their search result when they want to learn Unity game development.